Welcome. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today in this new session. We are very happy. We are very excited of having you all here. We invite you, please, to take a look into the question that we have on the screen. And please, let's write in the chat, okay, with your name, that introduce you all, please, with the rest of the colleagues. But also there is a specific question that we have for you today. And that's, tell us the advocacy relationship that you want to build. Okay, we have been talking about some of the actors, and we are going to talk today about relationship building. So is there any particular advocacy relationship that you would like to build, and that you would like to, that you have in mind, that you would like to be working on? Let's please write that in the chat. What relationship would you be interested in building up? And as we can see in the chat, there are people writing, okay, people introducing themselves, and okay. So advocacy relationship with decision makers, thank you. Okay, with advocates, okay, very good, thank you. Please, let's keep writing some of the, with our community, thank you. Let's keep writing some of the people that we would like to have our relationships built. And we will pass it on with my colleague Joyce for the next few slides. So
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Welcome everyone to Boosting Leadership to Advance Life Course Immunization. My name is Joyce Muridi, a Boost champion and immunization advocate. On behalf of Boost, a program of Sabin Vaccine Institute, along with our partners from Adaptive Change Advisors and People Power Health, we are all delighted to welcome you to our 5th session. Here is our agenda for today. Like we've already welcomed you and everyone is checking in. We have a brief review and we will have an overview. And also we will have a case study presentation on evidence-based policy, financing, and advocacy. We will also have a relationship building session. We'll have checkout and of course the homework. And we will have optional discussion session where our facilitators and technical experts will be staying online after the close of the session for about 15 to 20 minutes. There'll be a conversation and answer session. Any questions you have, we welcome you to join, but it is not required. And you are free to leave at the close of the session. So for our project team slides today, we should be moving very quickly. I'm going to move through the project team slides quickly as we already did a full introduction during our course launch. By this time, I know you know all of us. The cohort of Boost champion facilitators and technical advisors who have been with us from the beginning and will be with us throughout the series. In our series structure, we'll be doing some review and takeaways, but in our series structure today, we will be looking at our journey in boosting leadership to advance life course immunization after the introduction. And in week 1, we looked at life course immunization. In week 2, we articulated the gap between the aspiration of life course immunization and our current reality, as well as how to tell the difference between adaptive technical challenges. In week 3, we focused in identifying which populations to target and key considerations when introducing a new vaccine, as well as learning about stakeholder function mapping, which is a critical next step in the advocacy and rollout process. Last week, our focus was on vaccine acceptance and demand and storytelling this week. And in the future weeks, we shall be looking at, we shall continue to look at we shall continue to look at, excuse me, I can't see this very well. Just hold on one second. We shall continue to look at further information on, I have trouble seeing this, I'm sorry. This week and the future weeks, we continue to build on our life course immunization, technical understanding, practical applications, and adaptive leadership and community activation skills. On our series structure, today, November 16, we'll be reviewing also our session 4, which is building acceptance and demand, building vaccine acceptance and demand, adaptive series. I'm having trouble with the slides moving very quickly. So please let me look at the slide on the series structure. Please let me have that back on. Elizabeth. Thank you very much. Today, our series structure, we shall be looking at the evidence-based policy, advocacy, and financing, whereby the technical concept will be on immunization, financing, vaccination, decision-making, and the role of NITAGs and advocacy. And the adaptive concept will be community activation and power, introduction to relationship building, testing, and iterations. So our next slide will be on the series review and review of our session 4. Please let me have that slide. Thank you. And here I had already said that last week we were looking at building vaccine acceptance demand, which is an adaptive challenge. And some of the strategies to address vaccine hesitancy and build trust are to gather input and generate research to understand vaccine hesitancy, perceptions, and motivation, address misinformation and rumors, build trust and acceptance through engagement of communities, equip health workers and plan communication in real time, as well as integrate the delivery of vaccines with other services in the community that the community prioritizes. We also looked at story of self, story of us, story of now, where people make decisions based on facts and emotions. And telling the story of self, who you are and why you care, helps build trust within the community. And today we are going to listen to one of the stories by one of our champions, that is Wilfrida. The story goes as my cousin Agnes, aged one Saturday morning, we woke up with a shock of my cousin Agnes, aged 5, not able to walk because both her limbs were weak. Agnes was taken to many traditional healers for healing, but to no avail. Her condition got worse as her limbs were becoming weaker and smaller as weeks passed by. She stopped walking completely and was unable to play with us. This was shattering to us as children. Winfrida goes on to say that this was her motivation to engage communities and promote health for well-being. Thank you, Winfrida, for sharing your story of self and hope. And I encourage you all to visit the forum to read the rest of Winfrida's story and other stories that have been shared by others. At this point, we'll be turning over things to our guest presenter, and I want to review some of the highlights. On today's session. Before I do that, we need to look at the evidence-based policy, advocacy, and financing module that you are already asked to look at as pre-work activity. The module discussed how immunization is a great investment with high benefit to cost ratio and high economic benefit to cost ratio. In the module, you also reviewed the role of the National Immunization Technical Advisory Groups, the NITAGs. NITAGs provide independent technical guidance to help countries make evidence-based policies. And finally, you learn some of the key steps in vaccine decision-making, policy and financing, which included understanding the evidence and the financing landscape, and being able to develop a strong advocacy plan. All the links are found in the EDAP module that you already had, and any other information or resources will be found in the Boost Learning group. In today's session, through our guest presentation, we will be discussing these key considerations that I already mentioned, and then learning more about a key component in doing advocacy work, which is relationship building. Allow me to introduce our first presenter, who is Lucy Kiarie, Senior Technical Advisor for Immunization at DPEGO. She has significant experience with new vaccine introduction, evidence-driven advocacy, and sustainable immunization financing. Lucy has collaborated with ministries of health in Kenya and Mozambique to support the planning, introduction, and implementation of HPV vaccines in 2019 and 2021, respectively. She also campaigned for sustainable immunization financing by linking the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance, and Parliament agendas. Her collaboration with these institutions in the budget-making process enabled them to make better informed funding allocation. Lucy has also worked with civil society organizations to petition governments to increase their support for routine immunization. Lucy, thank you for being with us today, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Joyce, for the introduction and also the opportunity to present on immunization financing, vaccine decision-making, the role of NITAGs, as well as highlight an example on advocacy. Next slide, please. Next slide. So, but first, let us see who is in the room. So the participation we have here, over half of us are funded by Gavi. So 68% of us are funded by Gavi. And then we have 32% who fund themselves from their domestic finances. Next slide. Let's understand how Gavi works in the financing process. So Gavi uses the gross national income per capita to determine eligibility for Gavi support. So as you see, as we move from the left to the right, you can see we start with initial self-financing and then towards accelerated transition. So what this means, as the country GNI per capita increases, the country is expected to increase its co-financing obligations with Gavi. So I won't go into details on this, but there's a source in case you want to learn how, for example, HPV vaccine introduction and where your country is at right now and what that means in 5 years' time as you plan for advocating for increased financing. Next slide. So I'm going to share an example on what do we mean by sustainable immunization financing. So the goal essentially is to enable countries to take long-term financial ownership over their immunization programs and improve financial management. As we've seen in the previous slide, the more the GNI per capita increases, the more the country is supposed to increase their financing obligations with Gavi for the Gavi-funded countries. And there's a lot to learn because different countries are in different phases of transition. So I'll go through legislation and economic evidence-based decision-making for this, although you can see there are other approaches that we can use in country. And I'll give examples of Kenya on a project that I worked on. Next slide. So I have I have looked at the charts and I can see we want to understand how we can talk to Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance, policymakers in general. And this is one of the examples that we had stakeholder engagement on legislation in Kenya. So the challenge was in 2010, we devolved our health structure, our health sector to, we have counties, 47 counties. At the time, we didn't have any budget line. The counties didn't know how to go about this because health was being funded from the national level. So the ask was, do we have a policy or a legislation on immunization so that we can ensure that vaccination has money all the time, despite all the other competing priorities? So how did we do this? We engaged Parliament, Health, Ministry of Health, Devolution, Ministry of Devolution and Planning, KPA, Kenya Pediatrics Association, CSOs, and also the National Assembly. We held national briefings with them, legislative workshops, and also worked with the county since the health had been devolved, the health is devolved. So, and this was through meetings, and we had an action point. So in the process, what was the outcome? So it happened over several years and not once. So Parliament drafted a bill covering vaccines and vaccine-related activities in 2011, and then Ministry also was able to map out the immunization legislation. So this was understanding what is happening, the baseline information that we had, and then also by 2014 we could see some progress. There was a vaccine procurement bill that introduced vaccine procurement trust fund to ensure that money for vaccines was available, and also a health bill was drafted and it became law in 2017. So while this was a process that we started, I'm happy to report that Kenya has now a Kenya Health Financing Strategy, and the advocacy, the meetings are still happening with the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health, as well as the parliamentarians, just to ensure that as we introduce new vaccines, we have money to support them. So I'll move on to another example on economic, next slide, please. Building economic, financial, and budgetary evidence. So we realized that this is important. So how do we ensure that we are using evidence for decision making? How do we even come up with a decision? So in 2017, we engaged, we did a desk review just to understand immunization financing, reporting, and decision making in Kenya. And then we also administered some questionnaires to immunization stakeholders just to generate evidence on the perception, use demand of economic evidence in immunization decision-making, planning and budgeting, which are key for sustainable immunization financing. And you can see the actors here that we engaged included national and county government, CSOs, and National Assembly. So after this, we held a baseline evaluation workshop just to touch base with them and share the report that we had, and also ensure that this is what was happening on the ground. And then we developed a strategy proposal. So one of the lessons that we learned here is that we need to build the capacity of our counterparts, the people who are working in immunization and also non-immunization stakeholders, especially on economic, building economic evidence, and so that decisions can be made. As we are advocating to the policymakers, let's have evidence that we can show and package it in a language that they would understand. So next slide, please. So moving on to in terms of HPV decision making, and when it comes to new vaccine introduction, I wanted to just highlight an example of Kenya and using the HPV vaccine introduction. HPV was introduced in 2019 in Kenya at national level, but before that we had a pilot demonstration in Kitui County, 16 districts in Kitui County, through the school health program from 2013 to 2015. And this was when the implementation was concluded, it helped inform how the strategies for the national scale up would look like. And at the time, proposal was made on using health facilities since school health program was deemed very expensive. But at implementation level, we found that girls were not coming to the health facility. So we had to use mixed strategies. So how did that process look like? Just a summary of that, we had stakeholder engagement through advocacy forums, disease-themed events, e.g. Cancer Awareness Month, and disease-specific days where we engaged religious leaders, community gatekeepers, CSOs, cervical cancer control programs, and others, just to ensure that we had this conversation going. So this happened even before the NITAG was involved. So NITAG came in, KENITAG for Kenya, reviewed available evidence, including lessons from the demonstration project that I mentioned, and recommended national introduction of HPV vaccine. And then we had the Immunization Interagency Coordination Committee reviewing both the stakeholders and NITAG's recommendations, and approved the introduction of HPV, which happened in 2019. So at the moment, after the ICC approved, we had the MOH leadership at the high level, the cabinet secretary, the permanent secretary, and the director general. giving their approval for resource mobilization and implementation. And that is where we sort of did the Gavi application and started talking to the counties just to see how the implementation and service delivery will look like. Next slide. So what are some of the challenges? So I have covered immunization financing. I have also covered building economic evidence, and I have also covered HPV vaccine introduction. So what are some of the technical challenges that countries mostly face when they're introducing a new vaccine? In this case, for example, the HPV vaccine. So weak stakeholder engagements, and we've seen stakeholders are very important, and this entails non-immunization stakeholders, such as the Ministry of Finance as well, because they resource mobilization and other partners that I have not mentioned. So there was weak stakeholder engagement, and mainly sometimes it's because the process is rushed and we don't have a lot of time. We have timelines to meet, but this is something that we really need to see how we can sort of have a deeper engagement with the stakeholders. So also what that means, having more vaccines complicates the entire landscape, immunization landscape, especially in terms of storage capacity, the cold chain, and other issues that come up, although this is something that can be solved by understanding the problem. And then sometimes there's inadequate funding. So NITAG requires a quorum for them to come up with a decision. So if we are not able to bring them together, and even the meetings that happen, the brainstorming meetings that happen before the deliberation is made, sometimes it derails the process and it takes a longer time than it should. And then sometimes there's scanty data, lack of evidence, delays also the decision-making process, and especially on country level data. For example, if I wanted to find out which county has the highest disease burden when it comes to cervical cancer, is that information readily available? So those are some of the technical challenges. So I'll move to the adaptive challenges. And this involved some power dynamics. Sometimes we know loudest voices in engagements might end up carrying the day without well-refined evidence. So how do we sort of ensure that everyone's voice is heard, and also look at the evidence that we have without emotional or the power dynamics? And also sometimes when you're introducing the new vaccine, there's fear of the unknown, side effects, as much as there's data to show that it's effective. Or maybe until you understand the context, you cannot come up with a one-size-fits-all solution. And then also vaccine safety concerns. I know we've tackled, we've seen how to sort of improve the confidence on vaccine on this. There are some safety concerns, and it's context specific. So need to understand what exactly is going on and see how best to address them. So in terms of advocacy, next slide, please. So as you will see, advocacy cuts across all what I have talked about. We've seen talking to the policymakers, as we call them. And this is a picture that I want to show today. It's a story. So on my right is Millicent Kagonga. She was diagnosed with cervical cancer in 2015. This is her talking to a stakeholder engagement. It was a stakeholder engagement. So this is her talking about cervical cancer and the importance of having our daughters vaccinated. So in 2015, she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. At the time, she says she felt hopeless. She felt she felt helpless, hopeless, and also she could see her marriage life turned upside down, and as well as she was being shunned by neighbors and friends, and she lost a child in the process as she was undergoing treatment. But she found hope. She underwent the treatment, and she was able to, in 2018, she was told that she's free of cervical cancer. And she made a vow that she will talk to parents. She'll talk to both men and women because they're important, and ensure that they have their children vaccinated. So on the right, you can see this is her daughter. She was actually the first girl to be vaccinated in 2019. She was 10 at the time. And you can see the president looking at her, and then we had religious leaders as well, and we had the cabinet secretary of health at the time. So if there's a story of hope, I want us to see Millicent Kagonga, how she's able to go through the challenges that she has, but she vows that the next generation will be vaccinated and free from cervical cancer. So thank you so much for listening. I'll hand it over to Peja for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. I think let's do a round of applause for an amazing presentation, and what a perfect setup for the conversation about relationship building, especially especially in the context of what you've just seen on the pictures, like how advocacy is actually really directly connected to relationships. So let me start by asking all of you a question that you can either answer in the chat or raise your hand. Have you ever built relationships in your life? And I assume everybody did, but like just want to ask that question to show you that what we're going to talk about today is not a new thing. So I see people, yes, saying in the chat and nodding and all of that. Yeah, we do that all the time as human beings. But in the context of life course immunization, and especially advocacy and policy making, it turns out that whatever you do, there will be multiple things that you will do. You will do the background and technical work and define the policy that you want to advocate, and maybe engage the experts who have the expertise in that. But in order for that policy or whatever project you're advocating for to become real, no matter what you do, you will have to build relationships. And what we want to give you as an offer today is a specific way to build relationships that is grounded in idea that people build relationship based on the values, what they believe in, not just their interests. And let me give you a case why that is important, because let's say hypothetically, if you were walking down the street or walking anywhere around you, and there's a stranger with a car stops by and they offer you a ride, how likely is that you will accept the ride? How likely is that you would say like, yeah, I will do it? I see a lot of no's. Unlikely, yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's less likely, but then what about if, let's say, again, a neighbor you don't know, but this time it's a firefighter who you know from the experience, and you know that he lives in your neighborhood. How likely is that you will join right now? If that was still less likely. Okay, like it's interesting. There we go. Oh, some people say most likely. Okay, so we have a mixed group here because there's some known facts, like you kind of like know the institution that person is representing. Okay, they have some credibility based on that. But what about if, let's say, you stop by and your close friend, somebody who you deeply know from your neighborhood, says like, "Oh, I'm going in your direction. Do you wanna ride?" I see like most like, yeah, people will just jump on that because, whoa, what a great opportunity. I can get a ride and I know the person. So this is to say that when we are asking people to do something for us, like, let's say you have a policy or you're fundraising and you ask specific person, a minister, or it doesn't really matter, a stakeholder in the community, we expect them to jump from, oh, I don't know this person, into I'm going to give them money or change the country's policies based on that. So again, if I ask you how likely is that going to happen, the answer would probably be, less likely. But if they have a relationship with you, if they have a strong relationship with you and they know you and you develop that, chances are that over time, it will be more likely that they will also accept the policies and also support you in whatever you're doing. And the reason for that is really simple. It's trust. When you meet a stranger on the street, you don't know them, you don't trust them, you don't want to engage with them, you don't want to commit to anything with them, because there's a lot of fear. Who's this person? What do they know? What do they want? As you build a relationship with someone, the trust is increasing. And the reason why we are doing this as a second skill, we did the story of self last time, is that you can use the story of self in a way to develop trust and use it in the context of relationship building, which you will see in the second. Because again, relationships are glue based on which people take action. If you think about the arc, it starts with a story, your own motivation, then you go into the relationship, and then relationship becomes a commitment. And as a commitment, you can change policy, you can get more funds, or you can do more engagement with your stakeholders. So how do you do that? How do you build, like in a public space? We all know how to do it privately. You probably have a lot of friends and family and kind of like connections, but how do you do it in a public space? So there are a couple of things that are worth recognizing here. Like, first of all, like relationships are always built between the people. When somebody say to you like, oh, I have a relationship with an institution, with the Ministry of Health, you should always ask them, who do you have a relationship with? Because it's never, you cannot have a relationship with an institution. It has to be two people that have a relationship. So within the Ministry of Health, there's someone you have a relationship, and that is kind of like enabling you to have a connection with that institution. So relationships are always between people, never between entities, institutions, companies, NGOs, whatever you want to call them. So the question here is, you know, how do you start building a relationship? And usually you start by having a shared interests. You know, I have an interest in a topic, life course immunization. You know, somebody else, Lahad, for example, is working for the UNICEF or Ministry of Health or Sabin. He has an interest in that. Based on the interest, we form a relationship. But that relationship will be transactional. It will be something that might serve us well, but it will stay on that transactional level. But what if at some point we both talk together and I realize that, oh, I do have some resources that I can offer. I know how to train people. And Ahad says like, okay, there's some expertise that I can provide. And we start exchanging resources. So our relationship becomes deeper. So it's not anymore just, oh, we are interested in these topics and that's it. But it becomes deeper because we start sharing resources. And then at some point, through the commitment to each other, the relationship itself becomes of value. You know, and you probably experience that in life. Like if I ask you about your good friends, by now you don't know what you're getting from them and what you're giving them and what type of resources are you changing. You have no clue because the relationship itself has become an interest of yours, and you kind of say like, oh, I want to preserve this. So as much as you can get in the policy work, in the advocacy, in fundraising especially, as much as you can get into that phase, that relationship itself become a value, it will be way easier to ask people to give you something or commit to action or support you in what you're doing. The more you stay on a surface level, on the level of interests, sometimes they will do it if it's in their interest, sometimes they will not do it, depending on that. But if you get deeper in that, the chances are that you will be able to do much more. So how do you do that? How do you build relationships? Usually we do that in the form of one-on-one meetings, and we will show you an example, actually two examples in this context. And I see the question in the chat, the difference between relationship and partnership building. I don't think there's a difference. Again, this is just pointing out that partnerships sometimes can be referred as partnerships between institutions, like Ministry of Health is partnering with a local community NGO. Even if you look at that, you will always find actually two people who kind of like built enough trust to represent their institutions and then connected their work and made a commitment in the name of those institutions. So if you look at any partnership that is out there, there are people behind that are enabling those types of partnerships and creating that. And this is all about that in a way. So the form of one-on-one meeting, that's how we do these things, is basically relatively simple. So we start by saying, okay, how do I get attention of this person? And usually that's a simple thing, like, you know, what is the connection? How do you know? Like if I want to talk to Sam, I might ask Nikwo to say like, oh, Sam, I want to talk to you. Nikwo recommended that you are a great one-on-one modeler and you're going to do that amazing job. So I got his attention, you know, like, so basically that's how you do that. Then at the beginning of the conversation, you explicitly say, what is this conversation about? And this is really, really important because have you ever been in a situation where you start talking with someone and they're not getting to the point, and at the end of the conversation, they actually tell you why they wanted to talk to you? Usually, in my experience, that is the feeling that you get out of it, is really being manipulated. Oh, somebody was hiding actually the point, having a nice chit chat with me, and then at the end of the conversation, they ask me, like, to do something or give them something or whatever. That is not what we want to do here. So you want to say, like, from the beginning, this is why we are doing this. And then probably this is the most important part, the exploration part. This is where the stories matter. Like, this is where you want to understand the other person's story, like, and really elicit from them, why do you care about this? What's behind you? Like, what are the values that you actually care about? And that is the big chunk. The biggest chunk of the one-on-one conversation is exploring other people's stories. Because believe it or not, if you're to motivate and build a relationship with someone, there's no way you can do it. You have no power to motivate anyone. I can tell you right away. The only way to motivate people is to enable them to motivate themselves, because they have the power to take action. And if you create a space where you listen and you elicit their stories, like you hear their stories, chances are that there will be much more commitment from them at the end, because they motivated themselves, like, and you just provided the space for that. And you will see that in action in just a second. So after that exploration, we want to talk about the resources. Okay, we learned our values. Maybe we are aligned with the values. What can I give you? And this is really important. Not starting with what you want to ask from a person. Let's say I talked to Elizabeth, and we develop a common set of values, and we share the stories and all of that. And instead of jumping into, oh, Elizabeth, can you do this for me? Stop and think, what is it that I can do for Elizabeth? Because that is a signaling that it's not just extraction. You're not just taking away something from that person, but you're really willing to share and to find a common ground and build something together. And then finally, the last piece of all of this is a commitment. And commitment can be as simple as, let's meet next time. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be like immediately they will give you $1 million to run your program. Sometimes that will happen. That's great. But in many cases, the commitment is meeting next time. Like, let's continue building this relationship. Because without a commitment, there's no relationship. I raise your hand or comment in the chat if you had a chance to meet someone at the conference, you had a nice conversation, and nothing ever happened out of it. Anybody had that experience? Yeah, I see some. Yeah, because there was a lack of commitment. There was no commitment even for just one thing, which is, let's see each other. Let's talk next time. So, but this is all theory. Now we're going to actually show you the model, like show you how it works in practice. I'm going to stop sharing and invite my colleagues Sam and Joyce to actually model this for us in a short conversation, usually 8 minutes. And then we're going to debrief together. But as you're listening to them, listen to these 5 elements: attention, interest, exploration, exchange, and commitment. So Sam, take it away.
Thank you, Peja, and thank you, everyone. So let's go. Hi, Joyce. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Sam. Good to see you.
So thank you very much for making this time for this chat. My friend Peja was telling me, I was telling him that I'm going to visit Madagascar quite soon, and he told me that I should definitely have a conversation with you. So thank you for having this time for us to connect.
That's very interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Joyce. So one of the main reasons of my visit to Madagascar soon is that we are launching a campaign. We are going to prepare a project over there, and so part of this project involves some education and some other activities that I have heard that you are really keen about. So I would like to ask you about these HPV projects that I have heard a lot about you working recently. So could you share with me a little bit about that?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm very excited about HPV. And one of the reasons is because a neighbor of mine was talking of how their relative died from cervical cancer. And the daughter just happened to know after the mom died that there's actually a vaccine for HPV. And that has become a big talk in our community.
Exactly, Joyce. And now that you mentioned that, I completely agree, because in my community, it's also very common here in Mexico that people have heard about cancer, about cervical cancer, but a lot of them still do not know that there is a vaccine, that there are actual vaccines that could help people prevent cervical cancer. So I completely agree with you that sharing that knowledge and sharing that education with other people is really important. So could you tell me a little bit more, Joyce, about that experience that you had?
I think cervical cancer and HPV vaccine seem to be very new information in our community, and many people don't know about it. What I understand and what I have seen is that people are curious to know more about this vaccine, but there's no one to tell them. There's nobody to talk to them about it.
Exactly. No, you are definitely right. And actually, Joyce, now that you mentioned that, I could tell you a little bit more on why we care about this, and this team that we are preparing this campaign is it cares a lot about this topic. But before going there, I would just like to ask you, in your community, in your group of people, why do you care particularly about this project, about this HPV vaccination, Joyce? Why not some other diseases that we know that also happen over there in our communities?
Our country has a big population of young people and young girls. So if they learned about HPV at a good time, we can save a lot of lives in the community. And we have a big population of reproductive age girls or women.
Exactly. No, and I completely hear that, and I know that a lot of these girls in schools, they are eager and aware about their own health in some way, but that they need to know more about these vaccines and these opportunities that you mentioned. So you are telling me that if this campaign goes to schools and to girls in different contexts, they will be interested in it. Do you think that?
Absolutely. People want to learn. People want new information. And HPV, because they can hear about it, they can see posters about it, but still they don't understand what it's all about. And you know how people are hesitant about new vaccines. So it's very important. I'm excited you're coming over to Madagascar.
No, it's amazing. As you mentioned, it's not only seeing a poster or listening to some radio announcement, but actually seeing people sharing this in person. That definitely makes a difference, right?
Yes, I agree.
Well, Joyce, I know that we have other activities coming up, but there is a particular meeting in person that we are going to have in Madagascar next Wednesday at 4 p.m. in the local library. And I was wondering, Joy, if you will be interested in joining us in that particular meeting.
Yes, I would like to. I think I'll be free on Wednesday.
That will be amazing, because we will have this in-person training where we will learn about new tools and about how we can use the public narrative skills in order to share with girls and with their families about the importance of the HPV vaccine. So that will be of interest for you?
Yes, I'm interested. I want to come.
Excellent, Joyce. So, well, I will be sending you the details on by email, and we'll see each other next week.
Thank you, Sam. I'll put my email on the chat for you or text it to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So see you next Wednesday at 4
p.m. See you on Wednesday. Bye. Bye, Sam.
Amazing. Let's give them a round of applause here. If people can, I can see some people. Okay, we're gonna spend a little bit of time debriefing this because let me start by asking Joyce. Joyce, how was this for you? Did you feel like it was kind of like an interview or extractive, or it was something else? Like, how did it feel for you, like this conversation?
What I felt at first is that Sam has something he wants to talk to me about. And because Sam doesn't know me, I think he was trying to move around to get to what he wants from me.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's a little like, okay. So maybe Sam, you can be more explicit about like why you wanted to talk to Joyce. But what other elements people observed? Let's start with the attention. How did Sam captured Joyce's attention? What did you see? You can put it in a chat or speak up as well. How did he capture the attention at the beginning? Do you remember? He started with a he started basically saying like, oh, I've heard about you from Peja or somebody. A common reference. There was a common reference that was recognized. And then he talked a little bit about the project, how he's going to Madagascar, but not necessarily details about it. And then he asked Joyce to share like about her experience, and that is the exploration piece, like really figuring out like what is going on. Did they talk about the resources or not? What do you remember? Did they talk about the resources? Do you remember? No, maybe. Yeah. No, they didn't. Yeah. There was that, like that was missing. So I think it will be really interesting, Sam, because you're already going there. Like, what is it that you can offer? And then what might Joyce need? And exploring that and really figuring that out. That will be a way to improve the conversation. But there was a commitment at the end, and we've heard the commitment, seeing each other next Wednesday. And that means that they will continue the relationship. They will continue building what they've started in this process. So you see how this works. Like there's an element, and of course, this is in front of a lot of people. Usually you do that in a one-on-one conversation in private or on Zoom, one-on-one. The best conversations, the best one-on-one conversations are without the audience, definitely, and over a coffee or tea or definitely not in 8 minutes, because you want to spend more time with people, understanding where they're coming from. But for the purposes of going into the breakout rooms, we wanted to give you another model, and I was wondering, I can do this one to let the Sam off the hook for this one. I was wondering if Rukaya is on the call. I think I saw you previously, Rukaya. I don't know if you can.
Yes. I'm
yes.
Here.
Oh, there you are. Hi.
I'm fine.
Is it okay if we briefly talk? As a one-on-one meeting. Is it okay?
Yes. It's okay. It's
sure.
okay. But it's...
Yeah. Well, it's great to see you again. We did the public narrative and storytelling for change course with you joining that quite a bit of time. We haven't seen each other in a while, but I wanted to talk to you about something related to enabling nurses around the globe. We got an invitation from the WHO to work on them with a project to really support nurses to lift up their voices and share their stories. I know you're invested in that, and I'm curious about why do you care about nursing? I know that was part of your story of self when we talked a year ago or so.
Yes. So Peja, it's great to meet you again. Sorry, my voice, I have a little cold, so my voice is a little not clear. But
no worries.
it's been great after the training of public narrative or using our stories to get others to work with us. And I have done so much after the training. I've been able to get a lot of nurses to work with me, and then trying to build the leadership capacities of some of the nurses. And it is very important, as we have learned earlier, that it's necessary, because nurses are the majority when it comes to vaccination or healthcare delivery. And building our capacities or our leadership potentials would increase our ability to be able to get people, or to deliver more effectively, or get more people to buy into most of the health interventions like vaccinations and the other health intervention that we need. So it's been great. Initiatives like getting more nurses empowered would be something that I'll be interested in.
Yeah, Rukai, that is really fascinating, and I'm so glad to hear that you just didn't take the skills from the course, but you actually took that and then enable others. I'm curious, like, why did you do it? Because there are other people who would take the course, benefit from it, and do nothing with it for others. Like, where did that coming from? Like, where did you learn how to support others?
So,
you know,
my story, it is a lot of about empowerment. I came from where I had difficulties. Even how I got myself educated was a lot of challenges. So getting training or being able to educate myself and being able to get training from platforms like Boost, it's a lot for me to impact on others, to make sure that the knowledge or the empowerment that I get, other people are able to get there. Then we be able to work together to see that what we want or the challenges that we are facing are able to be tackled. So it is about my personal commitment. I am committed to seeing that most of us who are at the lower level and face most of the challenges are empowered to be able to tackle challenges.
That is so interesting, Ruka, because in my experience, when I was growing up and wanted to go to medical school, I also was not, like, I got a lot of support from other people in helping me write the application and supporting them. And then during the medical studies, and I always felt that need to give up, to give back to the community. And it seems like you have the same one. That is something that we definitely share. I know we are doing this thing with WHO, but it seems like you're already doing that. Like, you're already enabling communities on the ground and other nurses. How do you do that? Like, and what type of support? Is there anything I can do to support the work that you're already doing in your country and with other nurses?
Yes. We at my level, I work with nurses, community health nurses. So I organize trainings for them and have meetings where we discuss issues about the challenges that we face. And I use my story or use my my perspectives or what I learned from the public narrative to teach them or to impact them to be able to also do that for the communities. But on a broader scale, we can actually engage more nurses, because what I am doing is not enough. So engaging with WHO will make sure that a lot of nurses are able to go through such training and be able to impact or ensure that. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, WHO can come in, and then we get more nurses empowered, more nurses engaged in leadership training, and then using their stories to be able to advance our vaccine.
No, that is fascinating that you're Yeah, the Rukaya, you're already doing that without actually a training how to do that. I think this project, maybe, what I'm thinking about, like this project is actually part of it is also training other nurses how to train other nurses. So I think we could actually work together to give you even more training how to do that, and then potentially influence together the WHO to give us some more resources, especially for the country operations.
Exactly.
Because they're interested in that. Would you like to meet next week? And maybe I will bring other people who are involved in the project. Rita, if you remember from the course, is also interested, and maybe we can discuss together how to make it happen.
Yes, I'm available next week for a meeting and further engagement on how to get me more get the needed training to be able to train more nurses. So I'll be available for this.
And Rukaya, just for your reference, I'm actually not. This is not staged. We actually have a project that I really want you to join the conversation.
Wow.
This is for real.
Wow. I'm so much ready. I'm so much available for this, and and you can contact me anytime. That's great.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Okay, to be continued. Thank you.
Yes, thank you too. Bye.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, thank you, Rukaya, so much. Sam, do you want to quickly debrief the conversation with the people? So it's kind of like awkward that I do before we go into the breakout room.
Sure. So let's see. Who can put in the chat? Was there a clear interest in the first moments of interaction between Peja and Rukaya? And let's see in the chat. The people were able to identify that moment of interest in their first few minutes of interactions. Let's see the chat. Yes, there was a common interest. They had met before. They had worked previously together. Amazing, thank you. Did Peja ask Rukaya about why she cares about this and why she became a nurse? Excellent. Yes. So there was a great point of asking there. Excellent. He learned about why she cares about it. So there was that clear moment. Then about the resources, which there was it was missing in the first example. Could we see the resources here? Talking about training, talking about the next steps. Yes, excellent. Thank you. And finally, with the commitment, did we have a clear commitment of when they are meeting next? Yes. Okay. So they are meeting at some point of next week. Okay, very good. All right, thank you. So there was a commitment there. Okay, so then we were able to see how there is this project going on and there is a clear interest and there's a talk about resources and there is a commitment of the next step. There's going to be a specific meeting at some point of the next week. So there's going to be a follow-up. Some point of next week. Okay, thank you, everyone. So we can see clearly the 5 steps. And back to you, Peja.
No, it's actually back to you, Sam, to introduce the breakout rooms. And I think this was great to see people see all of that. And let me share the slides so you can see the breakout rooms.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. We are going to be moving into breakout rooms. Each breakout room will have 4 people. We'll have 4 of you. And during these small group conversations, there will be people that have a conversation between them. So just as you saw here, inside of each group, you will be selecting 2 people of the room that they will have a conversation. That conversation will last 5 minutes. And the idea is that you will cover these 5 steps, okay? Attention, interest, exploration, exchange, and commitment. When those 5 minutes are gone and that conversation finishes, the other 2 people in the room will make comments, will give feedback about what they saw, if every point was present, if any point was missing, and then we will swap. And the other 2 people will have a conversation, 5 minutes, and then we'll have some comments and feedback. So we will be sharing this screen in the breakout room so that everyone can see them. And I want to
Sam, one thing to encourage people, like use this as an opportunity to actually meet each other and not to act like or whatever, but like really like what Rukaya I just had a conversation and uncovered that there's actually potential to work together. Maybe there are other people in the room who you can meet using this and maybe really have a real commitment to work with each other after this. So.
Okay, so if we have the breakout rooms ready, we will be moving there in just a moment.
Okay, welcome back. People are coming back. Let's wait for a few more seconds for everybody to join back.
Hello, Pedro. I didn't benefit from this session. I wasn't in any of the breakout rooms. I was the only one on the floor here.
Yeah.
I raised my hand.
Hello.
No worries. We apologize.
Hello.
There were some technical glitches with the.
Exactly. There are some technical errors that happen.
Look, let's. I know there were quite a few people who couldn't join the breakout rooms. We apologize for that. We've been trying to figure it out on the spot, but Zoom gods were not working this time. However, we do invite you to reach out to each other. Like maybe you notice a name or someone, and you can do that after the session. But for those who were in the breakout rooms, who ended up in the breakout rooms and started the conversation, what did you learn? What have you discovered about this way of building relationships? And you can put it in a chat, like what interests, what values, what resources you might have encountered as you were doing that. For those who were in the breakout room, and I again apologize for those who couldn't get in due to the technical glitch with Zoom. So what did you discover about each other? Professional colleague from Africa, we share same values. We had an interesting conversation. Ikram, what was interesting about it? I felt like crying due to joy. Okay, this is a really great comment. We can actually work together. Ikram, go ahead.
So you want me to write or just talk?
No, just talk. What was
actually I am from South Asian region, from Maldives. I'm Ikram, actually immunization consultant. So I had a conversation with one colleague from African region. So we discussed regarding the actually we are on the way to introduce a new vaccine in Maldives, to the immunization schedule. There is pneumococcal and rotavirus vaccines.
That's so interesting.
My colleague was saying they are going to introduce HPV vaccine in their region. So actually we shared about that HPV vaccine. We have already in Maldives, we have actually introduced HPV vaccine before COVID-19.
That's so fantastic.
We have already started, and we are in talk with the stakeholders for introducing HPV vaccine to the boys. So
that's amazing. That's amazing, Ikram. I want to call.
Can I also comment? Excuse me.
Yeah, Abu Bakr, is that you? Or?
Yes, Teja. Thank you very much.
And then we can go to whoever was the other person. Like, go ahead, Abu Bakr. You said like you were crying due to joy.
Crying. Yes, Teja. So
why is
actually,
that?
I met a colleague from South Africa. So we discussed. At the end, she was also a pharmacist. I'm a pharmacist, and I realized that she was also a pharmacist. She just finished her B Farm, and I have 5-year experience in pharmacy. So we had good time. She's also working in immunization. She's pursuing her master's in public health, which I'm also doing. So we share same values. I talked to her about me not attending the recently the recent vaccinology course that is being done in Africa. I applied for it. I wanted to go to South Africa to attend that vaccinology course, but I couldn't join.
That's good.
But I was invited to attend virtually. She was also invited. So we share very similar values.
That's really
at
interesting.
The end, she took me as at the end, she took me as a mentor. So we exchanged phone number. We will continue our discussion on WhatsApp. She will learn more from me. I will learn more from her. She takes me as a mentor because she just finished her pharmacy school, and I have more than 5 years experience in pharmacy. We share similar things. So at the end, I felt like crying. Thank you very much.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I want to go to the person who said like wanted to comment. I didn't see who was that.
Yes, it's Chikondi. Sorry, I
Chikondi,
can't
go
put up
ahead.
my video. My laptop has a problem with video. So
Go
I
ahead,
had a
Chikondi.
challenging time. I had a challenging time in my conversation. So mainly it's because I thought it's a one-way conversation, sort of. I was the one asking the question. Okay, it was two-way, but then I was asking questions, but then I couldn't get the person to ask me questions. In the end, it was difficult for me because now I knew what he was interested in and everything, but he didn't know about me. And then that got me to think of the resources and everything. Like in a conversation where you're trying, okay, first of all, I also feel like the time was a bit less for me to break the ice and everything and explore more. Secondly, because okay, it was me asking what they're doing and then them not answering me. I mean, not asking me what I'm doing. I couldn't establish what we have, like the common interests that we have. And also further to that, it made me think that does every conversation or relationship building stage has to have an exchange, like the resources and everything. Because in that case, I had been trying to explore like how I'm gonna reach that point, but I just couldn't.
No, let me quickly ask you. I know we have to move on. Let me quickly ask you, what, if you think about it, what could you have done differently aside from having more time, which is in normal life you will have more than 5 minutes, of course. What you can have done differently to enable the person to share more with you and ask you more questions? Like, if there's anything comes to mind for you.
So one thing that came to mind was maybe just sharing about me. I don't know, but I wasn't sure whether that's the right thing to do. Like,
it is. It's absolutely a right thing to do, because it kind of like sometimes you need to share a little bit about you to get other person to see how they can share as well and how they can start asking questions as well. And I think that's a really, really good strategy. I know people are raising hands. We will have some time after the session to discuss this further. If you want to put your questions in the chat, please do. But I want to make sure that Nicole has enough time to lead us into the next piece that is also really important in the context of moving and making progress. Overall, great work, everybody. It was amazing to hear and witness so many relationships built in such a short amount of time that was given to the breakout rooms. Nicole, go ahead.
Thank you, Peja. Hello, everybody. And that was an exciting kind of segment of experimentation and trying out what Peja and Sam have been sharing with us for this session. And speaking about action, I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes about what it means to move the work forward. Next slide, please. How do we move the work forward? Through those conversations, through story, and more importantly, through experimentation. Okay, there we go. So how do we experiment adaptively? Another word for experimentation is simply action. So we're talking here about action and moving the work forward in terms of campaigns and whatever gap you identified for yourself throughout the number of weeks that we've had together. What's important to note here is, I'm sorry, can you hear me okay? All right.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Worth noting is,
yes.
okay, wonderful. it's important when mobilizing people to also include them in experiments, right? In the actions that you're doing. In the service of a larger purpose, of course. If you remember our definitions around leadership, they included mobilizing people in service of something much greater, right? And so effective experiments mobilize people. Ineffective experiments tend to, bog people down and keep ideas and purpose a bit fuzzy and can result in the loss of the authority that you have, formal or informal, that people have given you. Next slide. So I want to talk to you a bit about what I was listening out for when I was listening to Lucy earlier, when she was talking about, the interventions that she made in Kenya and that case study that she gave around, I believe it was HPV, and just the story around financing and coming up with the resources necessary to get work done. So to experiment adaptively, you need to get on the balcony and grab people's attention, right? Some of what Sam and Pedro were displaying for us in the two examples that we had. You have to grab people's attention, right? In that 5-stage approach that they took you through. And express the urgency of what you need to do. Distinguish between adaptive and technical work. That's important. I think Lucy spoke to ensuring that all voices are heard. That was something important in the case study that you talked about. Ensuring that the fear of the unknown is addressed when introducing vaccines, right? So there's a bit about hearing voices, about listening, and a bit about addressing, whatever issues are coming up for people. That's important. And it's important also to loosen the dependency on authority and give the work back to the people, that you're working with, and through strengthening those relationships. Pedro said a lot about relationships because you need other people to do this work. We'll talk a bit about these courageous conversations that you need to have in the few sessions that we have left together. Next slide, please. But I wanted to also talk to you about experimentation and iteration and taking risks, in doing this work that we're talking about here, closing those gaps or making progress on the gaps that we've identified. This is a model that is very useful in thinking about how to experiment. You have resources on the one side and risk level on the other side. And there's a correlation there. And, when you start thinking strategically about how to use your resources, the resources that you have, right? Pedro has spoken about this before, being strategic about what you have, resources, turning that into people power, what you need to achieve your goal, to make progress on that gap, while negotiating the risks that come with action, right? You may fail, but it's important to learn from those failures and iterate. We had a failure today on the technical side where, people were kicked out of rooms. We're going to learn from that, right? So it's understanding from with the topic that we're talking to today, financing, right? Finances are some of the resources that you have, and so are relationships, right? So is your capacity and expertise. But as you experiment and you take smart risks, it's important to understand, that correlation between the resources that you have and the risks that you're taking. So next slide. On to speak a bit to this in a more detailed fashion. This is called the 4 gates model. And as you'll see, it's still got that resources risk continuum, right? And the gates model, all it simply does is gives you an idea of how to experiment, do small experiments from starting with what you have to getting to where you want to get to, current state, future state, and that gap. Again, it's important to provide people with a clear idea of what you're doing. So you start with an idea, right? You want to narrow this gap in life course immunization, whatever bit of work you've identified for yourself. It's important to formulate that idea, right? And to generate, ideas on how you could do that. And the idea of the warm gate, that first gate, is really about approaching, people that it may be your colleagues, it may be your friends, and to test that idea with them, right? Before you take it to scale, before you take it to the public. And then in every step that you take from the warm gate, talking to your friends and colleagues, you'll get feedback. Lucy spoke about, action over several years, not just once, right? So over several years, this process of vaccine introduction and financing was happening in Kenya. And she talked about the different stakeholder groups that she met, building evidence, collecting evidence and data over time, and meeting those folks, in a staged kind of approach and getting feedback, until she got to the point where, through this continuum, we had the story of Millicent, that story of hope at the very end of that continuum. Even the president was there. So the idea is, get your ideas and whatever intervention you're planning to do strategically to people that care about you more than your idea, that warm gate, and then go to the opposition in that stakeholder faction mapping, right? And start to understand what resistance there is before you take this idea that you have to the public. So it's important to iterate, it's important to experiment. And I just want to give you an example of what this looks like. Next slide, please. And this is part of the homework that has been sent to you. It will be added to this chat box as well, so that you have an idea of where this comes from. It's an excerpt from a much larger kind of conversation around experimenting adaptively. This is an example from one of your colleagues, someone that filled in, as you will as well, this workbook. And there are a few questions here that they were asked in preparation for the experiment that they wanted to do. And you'll see that they addressed the gap, they re-articulated the gap, and here it was around ownership, community ownership of immunization outreach, right? I'm sure there are very similar examples when it comes to life course immunization, right? And the specific focus of the experiment was around engaging the community around catch-up, right, post-COVID-19. And the faction that this person was specifically speaking to or focused on was the community health workers. So very specific. And what behavior did they want to change, right? If you think about what Peja and Sam were demonstrating earlier also, the asks that were made of those people. It was to identify and work with a group of mothers in the community so that they could engage other mothers to bring their children for catch-up vaccinations, right? And how does your experiment account for the anticipated losses? Remember that idea around values, loyalties, and losses. Also important to think about that before engaging people, right, in these experiments. And more importantly, what does success look like? So, after this session, you'll have the opportunity to do this for yourself in preparation for conversations that you might have around narrowing the gap that we've been talking about here. And you'll get some coaching next week around how to do those courageous conversations. I've rushed through this because we had very little time, but I'll stay behind for another 10 or 15 minutes just to answer questions that you might have. So, okay, we'll skip that live example. The homework will be shared with you. It's on the Boost platform. And I'll ask one of my colleagues to put it on the chat box as well. And then the next slide, finally. It's the usual ask that we have of you to please fill out the survey. The link is in the chat box. How did you experience this session? And remember to complete the ADAP's self-paced course on ADAP. And then would love to hear from you around your reflections on today's session. So let me stop there and release people that need to go. But we're staying behind for another 10 or so minutes to answer questions. Let's take down the slides, Elizabeth. And yeah, that's it for today as far as the session is concerned. But we are still around. Your facilitation team is here. And now we're hearing from you about the session today. Is there something that you want to talk more about, that you heard, that you'd like clarity on, or just some reflections that you have from today's session? Over to you.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Lucy. Lucy, there you are.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Lucy.
Yeah, Lucy from Nigeria. Actually, I've been following up with the section up to date, but I've been